And just for some of those context bullet points, I was bullied for years because I didn't have a father to show me how to stand up for myself. My dad was a heroin addict for 30 plus years before he cleaned up. Held my daughter till she died, held my mom until she died. And I've actually cleaned my dad's blood up off the floor after they found him, after he passed away, after 10 years of being sober, but the damage was done on his body. And I say all that to say, because it's given me the most beautiful perspective on life and the value of time. And I live by this thought called Memento Mori, which is a Stoic philosophy. It says, know that you're mortal, know that you're going to die, but let that be the only motivation you need to get your ass out of bed every day and live life. And I've been given these experiences and these tragedies, as people would call them, as lessons to, number one, start my own healing, show up for myself so that I could basically show up for the rest of the world.
Welcome to the Susan Sly Project, where entrepreneurs rule, startups launch, and the side hustle becomes the main hustle. Ladies and gentlemen, your host, Susan Sly.
Hey, what's up, everyone? I hope you're having an amazing day wherever you are in the world. I think we're in, I don't know, they tell me it changes every week, 103 countries, 105 countries, wherever you are. Thanks for being here. And I have a question for you. So how do you come back from tragedy? So that's the question, whether it is that you're going through a divorce or a negative health report or financial devastation, or you got laid off. How do you come back and come back stronger? And I know for those of you who've been longtime listeners, we have some themes happening. We have Brandon Steiner, who came back from getting ousted from his own company. You've heard from incredible people like Jesse Itzler and Dave Asprey and all these different folks who come back. But my guest today not only came back from tragedy once, he came back from tragedy twice. And on top of all of it, he has incredible grit. And we're both Patriots fans, but now the Tampa Bay Patriots, as we call them. Right. Anyway, so my guest today is the founder of 46 by 2 Partners, and he served in the U.S. Navy. He is an amazing entrepreneur. He's a podcast host, and his lifelong commitment is to really teaching people how to navigate the world of finances in a way that is so conscious and brilliant and amazing. He's come back from tragedy, not just for living with his father, who was a heroin addict, but losing his beautiful daughter when she was born. My guest today is the one and only Jesse T. Jesse, thanks for being here.
I'm gonna throw this out there, and you could say no, but can you be my hype woman moving forward? Because that was amazing.
Yeah, you know it. And I'm a not so cheap date. Like, my currency is, the listeners know, really good Pinot Noir. Yeah.
Got it. Well, I'll have the Pinot ready, but thank you so much for having me on your show. Thank you to the listeners and the viewers for receiving me, and I look forward to this conversation.
Jesse, I just read your Yahoo Finance article. It was amazing, and it was emotional. And I always believe that people come onto the show, I don't even go and try and search for guests. It's just, we were connected by our mutual friend, Mark Victor Hansen, and people just come, and I went, oh my gosh, I have so much in common with this person. I want to ask you, like, right out of the starting gate, when did you decide to change your life? Because it could have gone so many ways. You grew up in Boston, not in the nice part of Boston, like Cambridge. You grew up in Boston. Your dad is an addict. Your life could have gone so many different directions, but here you are today, super successful. When was that moment, that defining moment, that you said, enough's enough, I'm going to do things differently?
I always knew in my heart and soul that I was meant for something different. I felt out of place growing up in Boston. I was very empathetic, had a big heart. Boston's very cold, very tough. Physically, weather-wise, it's just a tough place to live. And I just always felt like my soul needed to be in the sun. And I always fancied myself living in California, being a surfer. And it just, it wasn't for me. And I knew that pretty early on. And just for some of those context bullet points, I was bullied for years because I didn't have a father to show me how to stand up for myself. My dad was a heroin addict for 30 plus years before he cleaned up. Held my daughter till she died, held my mom until she died. And I've actually cleaned my dad's blood up off the floor after they found him, after he passed away, after 10 years of being sober, but the damage was done on his body. And I say all that to say, because it's given me the most beautiful perspective on life and the value of time. And I live by this thought called Memento Mori, which is a Stoic philosophy. It says, know that you're mortal, know that you're going to die, but let that be the only motivation you need to get your ass out of bed every day and live life. And I've been given these experiences and these tragedies, as people would call them, as lessons to, number one, start my own healing, show up for myself so that I could basically show up for the rest of the world.
That's beautiful. And so many people, Jesse, I lost my mom. She was an addict. We were chatting before the show, and I didn't even tell you that. So the last 3 years of her life, I was estranged from her. She disappeared. And then I found out actually last year they had found her, and she was really literally skin and bones. And it was a very sad and tragic life. So I've walked that path myself. There are a lot of people out there who allow their tragedy to define them. However, you're a person who's allowed it to refine you. And for someone listening and they're going, Jesse, I'm going through a really tough time right now, and I have a business, maybe it's going sideways, or, financially things aren't good. What do you want to say to that person? How can they gain some perspective?
I would say be gentle with yourself, but the first question I would have them pose to themselves in the mirror as they're looking in their eyes and soul gazing with themselves, tell them they love themselves. When's the last time that they've said that? I read a book that changed a lot of books have changed my life, and books find you. I'm a big believer in people, like you said, people find your podcast to be guests on, like they just appear. It's universe, it's source, it's God, it's whatever you believe in, sending the right people at the right time. And in my time when I needed it, but I wasn't really searching for it, a book came to me called Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It. And the idea is getting in touch with yourself and loving yourself. And there's these practices and meditations that help you do this, and the magic that can be created, because let's be honest, when's the last time you looked in the mirror and truly had that conversation and said, I love you, to yourself? And if people are going through hard times, they will a lot of times try to self-medicate, or they'll try to diffuse and put stuff out so it doesn't hurt them. But you really got to sit in stillness, and you got to be uncomfortable, and you got to love yourself before anyone else can love you. So I think, as woo-woo as it sounds, and I'm very spiritual, so I think I'm allowed to use that word, but as woo-woo as it sounds, it starts with self-love, because it's pouring from an empty cup until you love yourself.
That's beautiful. And it's okay. This is a very spiritual show. So we talk about God. I always say the guests don't swear, because I'm not a prideful person, but I don't have that rating on iTunes that you get when people swear. So I've even had like super swears, and I'm like, dude, no. And I used to be a prison guard, so I can be a little hardcore.
You're a prison guard. I was reformed Navy sailor and a kid from Boston. So I feel like I'm doing really well, but I won't drop any bombs.
Okay, deal. Let's talk about that. And thank you for your service. I have the utmost respect for the military, and I've had a lot of people who've served on the show. It's interesting what we can learn from the military, even if we were never there. And what is, maybe one or two things you learned from your service that you're still applying in your life today? Other than making your bed first, right?
Right. Well, yeah, right. And there's so much that comes from that. But the military was way harder to make your bed. They wanted to bounce a quarter off those sheets. That's not happening these days. So, but the military was always embedded in me. My grandfather was World War II veteran. My mom was active duty Army at a time where there weren't a lot of women serving at that capacity. And so I had these influences growing up that were embedded in my psyche. And I was a rebel at heart. So I had to go experience life and screw up a bunch of times, and then realize that those things were placed in my life for a reason. The biggest learning I had was leaving Boston. I had gone down a path of, selling drugs for a couple of years and doing drugs for a couple of years. And really, a side note, that gave me so much empathy for my father, because I knew what he was going through. And it tied us together in a really kind of almost sick way, where I understood him better because of it. And later on in life, when he cleaned up, we connected on that point. But to answer your question, the military saved my life. My mom pushed me, and she said, listen, you need to go, you need to change your life. You have all these abilities and skills that you're not using, and you're killing yourself. You're going to end up dead or in jail. And I had already seen some friends walk down that path. And I was like, you know what? I wasn't called to do this. I put myself in a position, and then I got trapped in this position. Let me work myself out of it, clean myself up, join the military. Haven't touched any drugs that are not like, psychedelics. Haven't touched any drugs since 2006. And the biggest learning I got was believing in myself, doubling down on my own ability. And then once I got into the military, it was all about teamwork and discipline and camaraderie and never giving up and never quitting. So there's a lot of life lessons from there. But the biggest thing I can say, Susan, is it saved my life from the path that I was heading down.
That's beautiful. Yeah, I left home when I was 15, Jesse, and did a lot of things. But I was one of these people that I wasn't really respectful of the gifts I'd been given. So skipped a couple grades in high school, started college when I was 16, finished a 4-year degree in 3 years, and then it was kind of like I just felt that there was something missing. And I had a bit of a chaotic childhood, going back and forth from my dad's house to my mom's house. My mom's house was always in chaos. And I felt I needed discipline. So that's why I became a prison guard, one of the reasons. And suddenly I got very disciplined. And even to this day, I make, one of the first things I do in the morning is I make the bed. The bed is very pristine. I'm like pulling down the viewers have never, and listeners have never heard me tell this, but in the morning after I do my prayer meditation, if my husband's out of bed after I'm making that bed. I'm pulling things like tight. I don't know about the quarter, but well, we'll see.
Yeah.
I love what you shared about that whole concept of self-discipline. And there are a lot of people right now, Steve Sims, mutual friend of ours, he and we spoke about this. There are a lot of people out there who want to be influencers, or they want to build online businesses. I think that if I could say they lack one thing, it would be the discipline.
Yep.
So how do you stay in the game when things are going sideways, when it's like a deal is taking a long time, or your portfolio just went down an epic amount in one day, or you didn't get in on GameStop when everyone in the Reddit group, whatever, I'm just kidding, or you didn't buy Bitcoin at $500, right? Like, what do you do when things are going sideways and it feels like it's taking a really long time to hit that home run?
Yep. I have two things. I lean on tools that are in my utility belt. I fancied myself one day a Batman kind of figure, and obviously that day is gone. I don't have a butler, and I'm not quite at multiple billions of dollars, so I can't quite be Batman. But what I do have is I have access to things, a lot of them that are free, that embolden and strengthen my mind and my soul and my spirit. So things like waking up and the first thing I do is train and work out and do all sorts of weird implements, from swinging club maces and jumping rope and martial arts, and just getting the body moving, because that's the physical. But it's interesting when you start doing, like, I can jump rope and all of a sudden a great business idea will come to me, because I'm taking my mind and somewhat shutting it off, and I'm just repetitively doing something. And so having that space created with something physical, number one, I'll go right to a cold shower right after. I don't even turn on the hot anymore. It's just cold. And it does so much for inflammation and staving off disease and mindset. And speaking about mindset, having thought leaders that I believe in, like David Goggins and some of these other people that are just incredible people, right? And so you have to have things, intermittent fasting, that helps me think clearer and operate better and move faster. And I don't drink coffee. And it's all this crazy stuff that's put together that works for me. That's the first thing, is find out what tools make you healthier, because you can't be an entrepreneur if you're not healthy, right? You can't lead people if you're not healthy. Like, you have to be healthy of mind, body, and soul. And so whatever protocols you use to get there, breath work, plant medicines, all that stuff I'm into. Second thing, support system. And I talk about this a lot. There's this rule of thirds, and this is what helps you get through the tough times, to kind of button up your question. So every entrepreneur, when they start out, it's roller coaster. They go the highs, they go the lows. It could be depressive. It could be lonely. Even if you're in a people business, it can feel lonely. Sometimes you have to reach out to people, and there's 3 people that you reach out to, the rule of thirds. So up on the top, people that are ahead of you, people that have done what you've done specifically, mentors, coaches, friends. Let them guide you on what to do. But more importantly, what I do in my business as a wealth manager, show people how to screw up less and help them not make those big mistakes and walk them through seasons of life. The second band in the middle is going to be people that are around about the same kind of place that you are. Couple of years in business, if that's where you are, seasons of life, maybe they have young kids, maybe they're doing similar things. You can share and compare notes, trade war stories, so to speak, and really kind of do life together, so you're not alone. And then when you become someone who has information, this is how you become a thought leader. You share your thoughts and you share things that have changed you. You give all that information that you've learned, and you give it back to the people that are coming up, and you become the mentor. And so you complete this circle of life. And so I would say, for me, it's the tools that I use every day that keep me grounded. The days I don't want to do them are the days I need them the most. And then leaning on people that are part of my tribe that I could do life with.
I love that you talked about the physical first, because Tony Robbins always says, if you want to change your psychology, change your physiology, right? And one of the things I started doing recently, you'll love this. So for a long time, I've run Boston 6 times. We were talking about that. I did the Ironman in Malaysia with a fractured pelvis a year after I'd been diagnosed with progressive multiple sclerosis and told I was going to die. I've done all these things. And one of the things I've not done is trail running. And I have these friends who do like ultra marathons and things. And I've always like, I don't want to trail run. So one of my pieces, if you don't feel motivated to work out, get a new piece of like workout equipment or workout clothes, whatever. So I buy these trail running shoes, Jesse, and I'm looking at these shoes and I'm like, I'm going to use these shoes. I'm going to use these shoes. And then one morning I was just like, we're going to the trails. And I was running out there near my house. There's a huge mountain preserve and I'm running out there and there's no one around. And I'm just listening to a podcast. And I'm like, this is the best feeling ever. And to your point, I love what you said. You can't be a successful entrepreneur unless you're healthy. Yep. And I've interviewed hundreds of people. You're the first person I've ever heard articulate how we seek advice. Someone who's ahead of you in what you want to achieve, someone who's at your level, and a thought leader. And that was powerful. Thank you for that. That's incredible. I want to switch gears and talk about money. It's one of my favorite subjects because money, let's put it this way. If you have a problem, money can solve, and you have money, you have no problems. So you are passionate, and in fact, this is your legacy work about wealth and teaching people not to screw up so often, as you said earlier. Let me start there. So tell, in terms of wealth management, what is it you do to really help your clients?
I help them create happy wealth. And happy wealth, shameless plug, I have a book coming out that will be titled Happy Wealth. And the reason why I'm calling it Happy Wealth is based on my life experiences and based on, coming from a place of scarcity and lack to now abundance and growth mindset. I've learned how to create wealth for myself and then share those ideas with clients and family. And I call my clients my client family. But when you deal with people, and you've seen this, money solves problems that are money problems. But unless you're happy, intrinsically happy, whether that's family, whether that's travel, whether that's the idea of whatever, the freedom that you can have, money isn't so great. And then even then, if you're not healthy, people would trade their fortunes to be healthy. So I use my wealth planning business as a Trojan horse to deploy consciousness awakening, how to be healthy and how to build wealth with some of those tools. And so what I do is with, the idea of creating happiness, because, if you're not happy when creating wealth, you're going to miss out on life and die with regret. And so I instill through financial planning, wherever life intersects with money, is where I advise my clients. I'm a fiduciary, which, just for some context, out of 400, it's what Tony Robbins talked about working with in his book. Yeah. Only work with fiduciaries because generally they won't screw you over, and they take in like an oath and a higher standard to do business. And it's not how the market really works. Out of 400,000 financial planners, 5% of us are fiduciaries. And that just means we align with our clients' goals. We don't have to sell them a product or service to make a commission. We give them advice on where life intersects with money. And I've seen so much life in such a short amount of time that I can really relate to a lot of people, business owners, entrepreneurs. And the biggest thing is when it comes to wealth, you have to be happy when creating wealth. And so what does that look like? Wealthy people have freedom and time. Rich people have money. And so when you can start changing your philosophy, emotional, behavioral concepts about money, you start looking at money as a different way, as a tool, and then you can really deploy it however you want. So I really look at money as a tool to create happiness.
Wealthy people have freedom and time, and rich people have money. That is so good. Let's imagine for a moment, because there are people listening in Africa, there are people listening all over the world. Let's talk about for a moment this concept of true wealth. And Jesse, I'd love for you to weigh in. Someone listening who's like, well, I can't imagine being a millionaire. I can't imagine, as Mark says, being a deca millionaire or making 10 million plus a year. I can't imagine this. What are some first steps that you share with your clients in terms of getting them to shift their mindset from a poverty mentality to a wealthy mentality?
Surround yourself with people that are successful. Surround yourself with the Susan Slys, the Mark Victor Hansons, whatever those people look like in your circles, because success leaves clues. And when you're around successful people, it's almost like they're a current in the ocean. They will help rise all ships, right? And so plug into people, find mentors, find people that are going to be uplifting and give you ideas. And also, that's the problem in itself. The obstacle is the way. If you don't believe you're going to become a millionaire, you're not going to become a millionaire. And why do you want to become a millionaire? What is that going to do? Because again, if you have $1 million in the bank, but you're lonely and you're depressed and you're unhealthy, like that doesn't matter. So why do you want the money in the first place? Is it to go out and, be a philanthropist? Is it go out to, impact people and change lives? You have to find that why, like Simon Sinek says, find your why, find people around you that can help you get there. And then you bring up Mark. I was just hanging out with Mark last week in Scottsdale, Steve Sims Speakeasy, Mark Victor Hansen and his wife, Crystal, amazing human beings. And Mark is a really big proponent of the law of attraction. He's really big of the proponent of creating his own destiny. And the book that they just put out, Ask, talks about this. Ask God, ask self, ask others. And I've actually used that with him in play, like in emails. I've asked him for certain things and he finds it, he just responds. He's great. What he says is, and this is brain entrainment. So like before he goes to bed, he was talking about how he wanted to be a millionaire. He would tell himself 400 times, him and Dr. Jack Canfield came up with this idea. And that's like one of his longtime business partners. Tell yourself something 400 times before you go to bed. The reason being, another biohacking thing I'm into, is your brain waves are so suggestible just before you go to sleep or when you're waking up. Just before you go to bed, start talking to yourself positively. And it goes back to love yourself like your life depends on it. Yeah. So if you can tell yourself 400 times before you go to bed that you love yourself, if you could tell yourself 400 times before you go to bed, I'm going to be a millionaire in 10 months, and have those big goals, right? Like those big, scary goals, right? 400 times before you go to bed, tell yourself you're going to be wealthy. 400 times before you go to bed, tell yourself you're going to be in love, whatever it is. And I promise you, life will start to change.
When Mark was here, Mark and Crystal, and they were talking about ask, and that, I love that Mark shares that, because it doesn't cost a thing to walk around your house, or you're on the subway, or whatever it is you're doing, or on the treadmill, or you're outside running, and you're like, yes, I am a decamillionaire, or whatever it is you're saying. And I often walk around my house, people think I'm crazy, reciting these affirmations, because wouldn't you agree that we often make things too hard for ourselves?
No question. And there's some science behind this. It's something we have to kind of really be intentional about. With 60 to 90,000 thoughts per day, most of them are negative. So now you have to really tap into subconscious and neural training and all these different things. And really, you have to guard your mind, guard your heart, guard your spirit. But you also have to deploy empathy for yourself, deploy love. And again, those might sound kind of like, that's where the secret sauce is. You have to put the discipline in. You have to execute. But you have to be happy along the way, and you have to train yourself. And a lot of times pull yourself up off the ground, as you stated in the beginning of this conversation. Like, what are some of the things you use? Well, a lot of it just comes back around to being kind to yourself and having people believe in you sometimes when you don't believe in yourself.
Beautiful. Well, Jesse, I want to encourage everyone to check out your show. It's the Jesse T Show on iTunes, Spotify, like where all the good stuff is anyway. And if this show has been helpful, go ahead, tag Jesse and I on social. Which is your preferred social?
I like LinkedIn and Instagram. I'm on Instagram at Jesse_T, which is Tee. It's a family nickname because Todisco is hard for people to say for some reason. And then also Jesse Todisco on LinkedIn. TOD as in David, IS as in Sam, CO. Jesse Todisco, or at Jesse_T.
Awesome. And if you are on IG, go ahead, tag Jesse and I. Let us know what you loved about the show. Share it on social. I actually am the one responding to all the social. It's not one of my staff. I know. You're thinking it's someone I paid. No, it's me. So if you do give a shout out, it's going to be me who responds to you. Go ahead and tag us. Jesse, thanks again for being here. You're amazing. I want to have you back when the book comes out. Done. So we can talk about it.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for having me. I'm very humbled and grateful to be connected with you, to see where our journey leads. Amazing people are plugged into great people. Thank you to Mark and Crystal Hansen to be able to plug us together. And I'm just looking forward to see what the future looks like. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, thanks again, Jesse. And with that, God bless. Go rock your day. And this has been another episode of the Susan Sly Project.
Ladies and gentlemen, This has been another epic episode of the Susan Sly Project. For more tips, strategies, and ideas, visit www.susansly.com.